Hi guys, Togre here, and this is the first video of a 10-part-ish series where I'm going to do a how to start with WoW PvP from A to Z, and this video will introduce you to how you will choose your spec, your class, and race, and give you an indication on what you can expect on those specs. The goal of this video is of course to be as timeless as possible. It's more targeted towards retail, and I'm also taking dragonflight into account, so don't be afraid. If you want to prepare your next main for dragonflight, it should be also applicable via this video. I'll try to make daily videos about this series till this series is completed, and I'm also making a big playlist for those series, for those videos, so you can all actually watch it at your own leisure. And if you're missing one video or two, it's not a problem, because you will find it in the playlist on my channel. So you can basically play any race, so I'm going to cover it at the end of the video, and I'm not going to cover allied races because not everyone has allied races, and I feel like the main races are more or less the BIS races for classes anyways, and I feel like it's not as important. So little reminder, I'm going to talk about comps in a future video, because else this video will be a 2-hour long video, and I feel like it's not good for my channel, but also not good for you, because it will be a lot less easy to digest. So I prefer to do like a shorter format, but I still think it will be a long video regardless. So let's start with the first class, Warrior. For PvP, you are realistically only having two competitive specs, which is Arms and Fury, but also a quite mini spec if you want to try Protection Warrior. Arms and Fury are quite the same, to be honest. To be frank, whenever you are going to choose Warrior, it is mostly because of the playstyle, but also the actual feel of the class. You are going to play a relentless melee that is actually going to do a lot of damage in their faces, basically have great utility for your party. And if we are talking about spec specific, Arms is more methodical. Most of the time you are going to look for Colossus smashes, big Mortal Strike windows, and Fury is mostly beginners friendly, so it means that you have like a lot less preparation needed to do big damage. You have good consistent damage, and it is mostly better than Arms at that specific thing. Historically, warriors are most of the time meta, so if you are taking an Arms warrior or a Fury warrior, it doesn't actually like matter, because in the history of WoW, like warriors in general were always A or S tier specs classes, and that will probably not change, because warriors, like mages, like rogues, they have specific niches, specific playstyle that actually suits for the game. So choosing warriors is also choosing for easy access to a lot of comps, RBG groups. You will struggle in solo situations though, or normal BGs where you have like no healers, and you are pretty much like a squishy barbarian ready to kill or be killed in those situations. And now we have Hunter. We have like 3 great specs for PvP with Hunter, regardless of tier list, regardless of everything. I think like 3 specs being fun by their own rights is actually a very good thing. So if you're choosing Hunter, you have like 3 great specs, and basically you can't go wrong. But we will start with Marksmanship Hunter. It is the range spec of excellence, the sniper of World of Warcraft. With this spec you can expect big burst potential, like sometimes one-shot potential, great kiting possibilities with a touch of CC. Often this spec is in the most meta spec in PvP because of the obvious hard to land burst in arenas, but as a lot of pros and streamers show you, you really can prefer this spec to excellency. So if you want to play don't be afraid to actually play the spec that you actually love. Beast Mastery Hunter are the notorious easy spec to play because of the rotation being mostly instant, easy to land, and easy to perform. You have some great CC, a pet that does a lot of damage, which is basically unavoidable, or at least if the pet is still alive, and you have, like some great kiting possibilities. If you are looking for a pet spec with good to great damage and kiting possibilities, BM might do the trick. And survival, this is your melee spec. But you also have a lot of ranged spells, and you have also ranged possibilities. You have Invalence CD that makes your Raptor Strike being a ranged spell. So really, you are just a hunter, sometimes melee and sometimes ranged. You are very slippery, you have a lot of great CC potential, the mechanics are fun, though you will feel squishy at times. If you choose to play Hunter, I believe you choose for the 3 specs anyways. They are similar, but still different enough to make you switch specs to train yourself, but also to entertain yourself. And now we are going to talk about Mage. Mage, that's a class where I feel you will have always a spec that is really highly regarded. Let's start with the least played spec, which is Arcane. It is frankly a alright spec to have fun with, but you will see that you are often off meta with this spec. For now, it has only one school, which makes it hard to cast and perform versus specific comps. It is the hardest way to actually play the class. It is tanky though, and really sometimes it gets the occasional great buff that makes it really strong and fun to play. Frost mages are awesome. You will have loads of fun obliterating people with that class. In Dragonflight, they will return with, of course, great abilities, and I can already feel that they will get their fan favorite spell back again, like for example Deep Freeze, which is really a fan favorite spell. You are relying on slows, roots, big crits to kill people. You will often play with a second caster so that you will have a better time casting spells. Fire mages are the setup spec. You are playing around combustion, which is a spell making all your other spells crits for amount of time. You will implode people, but you will also see that you are going to try to win time to get that combustion back. This is your kill window, and you will need to appreciate that playstyle to really enjoy fire mages. You're going to run away, go back in whenever you have your combustion, polymorph, 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 and then get a stun lock from your friends, for example, and then pop combust, and that's your window when you're going to kill someone. It is a very bursty spec, which has little to no great consistent damage, I'm going to be honest. Whenever you don't have combust, you're going to have a tough time killing someone. And mages are like a sure bet. If you want to stay in meta most of the time, the 3 specs are different enough to also feel like you are playing a different class, but you're keeping the mage utility that they all share and love. And now let's talk about Rogue. This is a stealth class by excellence. You want to be sneaky, you want to control people and do crazy bursts. This is the class that you should main. They are often on top of the tier lists because either assassination, outlaw, or subtlety is a S tier spec. They all have their moments, they all have their buffs and nerfs, but you will always have a spec to rely on. At the moment, those 3 specs do play differently enough to warrant an explanation. Assassination is the poison spec. You want to land as much poisons, as much bleeds as possible to actually perform well in consistent but also burst damage, since they are like tied with each other. And this spec is performing well and has different playstyles. Do you want to do big one-shot damage? It is possible. Do you want to do great dot damage and keep everyone on tilt? That's also possible. But now you have subtlety. It is the stealth spec by excellence. It has great burst potential and often in one shadow dance you can do the trick with a well placed kidney shot. It has loads of ways to run away, to reset and come back even stronger. And now we have Outlaw. It is the most controlling spec, or at least most of the time, with blinds, short blind, kidney shots, resets on like CDs. So it's very, very controlling and very durable too, because you are more or less a brawler spec. You want to stay in combat, try to gain the upper hand by overwhelming the enemy, and with a well-placed CC that they cannot trinket, you can actually do a lot of damage and kill your opponent. Overall, a great class to main if you're looking to come back to the game. Rogue it is. So now let's talk about priests. Priests, they have 2 different healing specs. They have one DPS spec which is more regarded as a utility spec because of the abundance of utility and CC that they can provide. Disc Priest is the first healing spec which has the particularity of healing while doing damage. It has Holy School but also a Shadow School to heal your friends. So it means if you're kicked on Holy, you can still heal with your shadow spells, and vice versa. Of course, if you're kicked with both, then you're kind of screwed, but hey, that can happen too. So, it is versatile, it is very fun to play. The CC will be lacking because the other specs have them, and you are often the most damaging healer from the game. You can regard it as the hybrid healer. Instead of a hybrid DPS, like let's say Enhancement Shaman, this is the hybrid healer. You want to do a lot of damage to have like good kill potential, but you don't need to forget that you are still a healer and you want to heal your targets and your allies. So that should be also a very fun gameplay to actually perform with. You have also Holy Priests, and they are the most regarded healer spec in the game. Basically, if you're thinking about a healer, you would think about Holy Priest, because since vanilla, Holy Priest was always the healer spec to play for PvE, but also for PvP if you wanted to have some good output. But then you had Disc Priest, which is the utility, the damage reduction, the buff like PI. PI was on the Disc Priest 3. So they all changed that. And what can you offer as a Holy Priest? Big heals, big defensive CDs, like for example Guardian Spirit, Guardian Angel, but also in general utility. It has great CC, can do some great damage with like a Holy Fire, and is reliable for the most part, and that's very important. A Holy Priest is reliable. You know, whenever you have a Holy Priest and he is not CC'd, he can heal you up, he can do CC, he can actually help you overcome challenges. But often, Holy Priest is actually more off meta than meta. But these days, they are quite gone. I mean, even in Dragonflight, they still have the utility that they actually have in Shadowlands. So, Holy Priest is at the moment the most S tier spec of the game, healer-wise. But if you are looking for a beginner's healing spec, I would for sure give Holy Priest a shot. And once you're doing great at healing, I would then give Disc a shot. And then you can decide which one you find the most fun to play. Shadow Priests are the utility maniacs. They do great instant CC. They have some great dot pressure, and you can really execute people whenever they are low HP. It is known to be one of the hardest specs to play since it is really immobile and has to cost a lot. So if you want to have a challenge, I would just play Shadow Priest. If you want to be a controller with great utility and some good damage, I would then suggest to play Shadow Priest and find yourself a primary DPS to play with. But if you want to do damage like a DPS should, I would just then give a shot to Warlocks. And Warlocks has 3 great specs, regardless of tier lists. I feel like if you're talking about pure idea of a spec, I think Warlock is really awesome because you have like one spec, Affliction, which is more dot based and kiting based, and you want to drain life, you want to be tanky, but you also want to do a lot of damage, you have a lot of possibilities. You have Destruction, which is the big damaging casting spec that has big balls, big bursts, doing big numbers, doing like montage video damage. And in general, those two specs are not the easiest specs to play because they require a lot of kiting, but also a lot of casting. So you need to fake cast a lot. You need also to understand which are the targets that you are actually trying to kite and which one you want to fake cast it. So it's very, very important to learn and give time to learn, because you will play Warlock, you will get stomps, but that's not the problem. With these series of videos, you will learn and understand what it takes to actually be good at PvP. And the learning process is very satisfying, which really, it is hard to pull off in PvP. Like Warlocks in general, with the amount of mobility and CC the game proposes, it is actually very hard to perform, but you will with a lot of training. But you have also a Demonology spec, which is the third spec based on pets and summoning. So it is the second one, like the second pet based class, like BM Hunters, and they are a niche spec for the most time because it is normally a D tier spec and now it become a S tier, A tier spec. But that can happen. But often than not, you need to pick a class or a spec because of the playstyle, because of the role, because of the flavor of the class, and not really on about tier list, because the tier list will change regardless. The tier list doesn't need you to be waiting because it's ever changing. Like Outlaw, it will not be S tier forever. It will get nerfed and then it goes back to D tier, for example. So then again, it is very interesting to play if you want to play a master summoner, for example, a warlock that actually wants to bully people out of the face of the earth. Then you can just play Demolock and be obnoxious with the tankiness that you propose, with the pets swarming their screen, trying to get the tilt off and trying to kill the demon that you actually have summoned, but that's too late because you already killed them. So, warlocks in general are more inclined to play those three specs at the same time, because every time there's a nerf, you might just switch to affliction, and then you might just switch to destruction, and go back to demonology, etc. So you really, I feel like warlocks, like hunters, you're bound to play those three specs at the same time. Since really the idea behind the specs are a bit the same, but they are still different in their approach to on how they want to deal damage and survive with kiting. Let's talk about the Warrior of Light Paladins. Really a fun class to play. You have basically two PvP specs, and then you have like the occasional Protection Paladin, which is sometimes meta and then sometimes it isn't. But let's talk about the DPS spec. You have Retribution Paladin. You are the big burst machine. Again, montage numbers videos, like the numbers that you are going to produce are montage worthy. But yeah, sometimes you will feel like a wheelchair, because the meme about wheelchairs do exist, because you are truthfully without mobility. But you have a lot of damage, you can show your wrath to the enemies and implode them in 1, 2, 3. You have great off heals, great utility, but again, lack of immobility. It is also very fun to play, and to be honest, you have a lot of possibilities to explode people, and that alone is a satisfaction by itself. Holy Paladins is the healer side of the things, and really, if I have to give a name to Holy Paladin, it would be the utility-based healer. You have so many tools to actually survive, but also make other people survive. You have great AoE healing, and versus a lot of comps, sometimes AoE healing is the way to actually win the game. They get to be meta 3 times out of 4. Like if you have like 4 seasons, there's like 1 season where it's not meta, and then you have like 3 seasons where it's doing good. I think you would choose to play Holy Paladin if you are kind of choosing to play a melee healer, because you are kind of a melee healer because of the mastery, because of all the things. And going into the fray with your allies and healing with them because of your holiness. I mean, that's by itself, it is if it is giving you the satisfaction, I feel it would be a blessing to actually have you as a paladin. Let's talk about druids now. And druids are really, it is going to be a long section, man, because they are the most versatile class in the game. If you really don't know what to play and what role you want to play, I think druids are the best at that, with maybe the next class. You have a healing spec, you have two DPS specs, which is one a caster and the other one is a melee, and then you have the fourth spec, which is the Guardian Druid, and sometimes it is good, sometimes it is bad, sometimes it's just a meme, and sometimes it's just obnoxious, but it is still an RBG Guardian Druid spec, and you still can spec into it if you want to do RBGs and try to carry your team with your tankiness. But really, we can start about talking rest druids, because they are the healing over time healer. They are the choice of satisfaction because of mobility. You have so much utility because of the CC that you can provoke, the amount of CDs that you have, defensive and offensive. You can be actively winning games because of your decisions, because of your plays. You're also very slippery, very mobile, and makes it hard for a lot of people to actually catch you. Again, you can place certain affinities which boost the other forms. Like for example, if you're a feral affinity rest druid, excuse me, you can do some pretty neat combos, and sometimes results to a kill, a solo kill from a rest druid versus a DPS, and that alone is a satisfaction. But I talked about feral affinity. Let's now talk about the melee DPS spec, which is feral druids, and this is your melee stealth spec. It is a bit of a rogue, but not, because you cannot really re-stealth, but it does a lot of dot based damage. with some combinations of one-shot potential, with your bites, with your dots, rip, rake, all those things are very good. And also, you are very mobile, very annoying to kill, and that's a common thing for druids in general. It can be effectively a strong spec if performed right. It is seen as a specialist spec with hunters as well. It can feel weird to play at first because you have to combine so many playstyles in one character, but if performed right and mastered, you can do some really nasty things with it. And Balanced Druid is your cast spec. You are using the power of nature and arcane to do great burst damage. You can play more dot based, you can play more burst based, you can do a combination of both. You have great CC as well, and really you are probably the most annoying spec to kill in the game. You have mobility, you have tankiness, you have burst damage, you have the quasi instant CC possibilities you have. I mean, you are by itself the best support class in the game. But with a balanced druid, you have the best support caster in the game. And really, your role might be more of a support, but your damage sometimes will contradict this by one-shotting your enemies. And some enemies will just not understand and comprehend how the hell they died versus a balanced druid. But now, let's talk about shamans. And shamans, they are one of the most versatile classes, like druids. They can give you an idea of what a true hybrid can mean. And we can talk about Enhancement Shaman. It is your melee spec, which is based around dual builds, using the power of the elements to do big damage, and having totems to give the utility to your team. You have great off healing, which is often instant, have some great ranged DPS, which is also instant, but mostly you will do the damage in melee, which in turn gives you possibilities to have instant healing and instant like ranged DPS because of maelstrom weapons. So really, by itself, you're going to have a lot of fun just by picking Enhancement Shaman because it is very versatile. You have a few comps that can actually work, but those comps are very deadly. So if I have to give a suggestion on a melee that you should maybe play for the first time, Enhancement Shaman does the trick. And now we can talk about Elemental Shaman, which is the cast spec, which is based on casting a lot of lava bursts, lightning bolts, shocks, and playing around your fire elemental. Which, by the way, this fire elemental does a lot of damage. And based on your spec, especially in dragonflight, you can customize how you want to deal the damage. And do you want it to be more lava burst heavy? Go for it. Do you want it to be more based around the fire elemental? Sure. Or do you want to be the thunder god and play around stormkeeper and let ACDC roll for you? That's also possible. So one of the most funny specs to play IMO, I might be very biased, but I would suggest to play Elemental Shamans as your first caster class if you really desire to train and to learn how to cast in PvP. Resto Shamans is one of the most aggressive healing specs. Like, you have so much utility, you can do melee healing, you can do ranged healing, you have a kick, which in Dragonflight pretty much every healer will have a kick, but you will do a lot of damage as well. And in Dragonflight you will have Lasso, and if you have Lasso, the 2v2 king is back. Resto Shaman is going to be unmatched. A bit like Disc Priest, you have some great CC to offer, a lot of utility, a lot of damage, but from the looks of it, it is a spec that you really are embracing the Shaman playstyle, going for the totems, healing through them, but also saving people with them. If you want to play with totems and play around them to achieve your goals, then I would definitely suggest them as your go-to healer. And now we can talk about monks. I don't know a lot about monks, but what I know is that they have a lot of mobility. It is annoying to kill. It does feel squishy, but a good monk is slippery and you can really do a lot of damage. So you have two specs that are played in PvP. I'm not going to talk about tanks because you are going to roll for PvP and not for PvE. And Mistweaver, which is the healing spec, and Windwalker, which is the frantic melee DPS spec, really they are very slippery and very fun to play. The healing spec is one of the most slippery healer in the game. It can be a real poison to the enemy team. Sometimes they want to catch you, they can't, but whenever they catch you, you need to be careful because you can still die. But they heal a lot, and sometimes CCing a lot can also do the trick to win the game. A leg sweep, paralyze, maybe a sleep if you are playing with this. It's all possible. But also you're running a lot, and that thing makes you also the difference between a good Mistweaver and a bad Mistweaver, for example. Currently, they deal no damage, unfortunately, and I hope they will change that in Dragonflight. But for now, if you're choosing Mistweaver, be prepared to actually do only healing and peeling and surviving damage. It is a layback playstyle, but you can also always change. If you like to TP, torpedo, and just run fast most of the time, then I'd suggest to give it at least a shot, you know? Windwalkers, they are really the Kung Fu class of the game. It is DPS spec from monks. They do crazy damage, have crazy mobility, do have great CC. It has one-shot potential. They are not very tanky, so one misstep and you're probably dead. Could be your death sentence. They are fun to play, they have great potential, and most of the time they get to play fun comps. Like if you're playing with a fire mage, or you're playing with a warrior, or you're playing with a DK, or with a DH, all good comps. And you can really do a lot of damage. They are fun to play. So if you want to play a Kung Fu master, and that does a lot of sick damage, I would just go for Windwalker and never turn your back away. We are going to talk about Demon Hunters. And Demon Hunters, they are notoriously a noob-friendly spec. It is alright, you should always have that kind of spec anyways in the game. And there is only one PvP spec. I'm not going to talk about the tank spec because we are talking about PvP. And for now, tanks are not welcome into PvP, unfortunately, except whenever it's a cheese spec, for example. But it is a noob-friendly spec, but it has some great outplay potential, more than you would know. They do suffer of having not a lot of buttons to press. In general, you will feel that you have too many keybinds for that class that you are actually playing. And Havoc is a very mobile and very deadly spec to play. They are slippery, and sometimes you feel like they are not dying. They are a great cast counter, and really their signature defensive spell Blur can be very annoying to play against whenever you are a melee. So if you want to play like Illidan and really style on people with your eye beams, then I would just go for it. But be prepared to have a simple rotation and not so hard to land spells. But last but not least, one of my favorite specs since Wrath. I think in Wrath I rolled directly like Death Knight because it is just so good, so stylish. You really want to be the son of Arthas. So basically, you have two specs. The Blood spec we're not going to talk about, but you have Unholy, the Unholy DK, which is the Unholy pet-based spec, but sometimes it isn't. It is a dot-based spec, but most of the time it isn't. Really, Unholy is the combination of all sorts of damage sources. You can have a big pet source damage, or go for a more rotting damage based build. Or you can play a super bursty spec, which has little damage from pets. Really, it is versatile. You can also do a mishmash of everything. Very fun, anti-caster, and most of the time sticky, like a sticky spec to play. Like people will have a difficult time to run away from you. Frost. It is actually Arthas. You're playing Arthas. It does great burst damage. When left unchecked, has great windows of opportunity, has great AoE CC, has big montage damage based numbers, for example. Sometimes you can one-shot people, but you will see that sometimes a single disarm can screw you over. Okay, your burst is going to be over because your CDs are used and you're getting disarmed. That's the biggest issue for Frost DK. But you will see that really the most important fact that you are going for is that you are playing the Son of Arthas. going on a frosty rampage, if you want to be the juggernaut, the frost rampant plague, I would play Frost DK. And especially in Dragonflight, it seems like you have a lot of great builds to play, and classes that I actually have discussed all have great things going on in Dragonflight. So let's now talk quickly about races. It isn't the most important thing, since really it is not as an important choice as the class itself. So I'm going to state the most meta races from both factions, because for me you can play because of the style or because of the races in itself. But if you want to decide about meta, you can go for these races. So you have humans, which are very meta. They have a stun break, which can open up with which trinkets you are going for. Dwarves have a great defensive dispel and could make it like you're going to survive damage that isn't prepped by CC. Night elves, they have a stealth which actually can cancel CC or a damage ability that is actually applied or flying towards you. So it's a very skillful ratio to play with. And for stealthies, it also gives you a reset to stealth back. So if you're a druid, like a feral druid, and you're stealthed, you can just stealth back easily because of it. And horde wise, you can play orc, which has a stun duration reduction and a little power buff, like a power up buff that you can apply whenever you're going to burst. Undeads, they have a fear, charm and sleep break, and Tyrants, they have a little AoE stun that could help you decide the game. And of course, you also have Pandarans, which is good for our Horde and Alliance. They have an incap, which gives you another CC possibility. For a lot of classes, they need some extra CC, and especially mages, for example, it just can ease up a polymorph, for example. But really, I would just play the race that you actually like to play, because I have difficulties myself playing a race that I don't like the animations for my spec or class that I'm playing. For example, I do refuse to play Pandaren because whenever I'm trying to play Pandaren, I felt the animations are not right, and there is that. So basically, just play the races that you actually prefer to play. So now, this marks the end of the video. It has been a big video, but I wanted to go in detail on what you can expect from the different specs that are actually available. The next video will talk about your role in Arena, and we will separate them. So for example, you have a DPS. We will talk about DPSs, how they are seen as primary or a support DPS, or even an alt DPS, for example, or more a specialist, because there are specialist classes, for example. And as a healer, you also have some information to take in, because you have also different healers for different purposes, and we are going to go over it, so then you have like a broader idea on which class you should main for next season or for in Dragonflight. So thank you for watching the video. I hope it was useful and helpful. Let me know in the comments section below what you think about the video. Did it help? Did you learn something? Anything? Let me know. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. Comment in the comment section below if you think talking about to me, asking me a question about the video, about something else. Let me know and I will always respond. Please like the video if you like the video, and be sure to watch the next videos of this series. It will be very informative. So thank you for watching. Have a great day and be blessed. Bye.